nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell here with my co-host Glenn Martin and our friend of the show, Chris Carter. That's right, the Chris Carter. He's an NFL analyst from DK Pittsburgh Sports and a host of Locked On Steelers podcast. So make sure to go check those things out. But based on that, we're really excited to get your take as far as the Steelers' upcoming season expectations, and we're going to press you on some questions we have as far as Ravens fans go, looking at the Steelers. So, Glenn, first of all, Chris, thanks for coming on the show again, and Glenn, I'm going to let you kick it off, man.
All right. Well, Chris, the biggest storyline surrounding the Steelers coming into this upcoming training camp is, of course, Ben's health. Obviously, when he went out last year, the team, the expectations changed drastically. So with, Ben's health coming back, he says he's healthy, he looks healthy, but what's the level of confidence or concern that Ben can get through a whole season? And also the fact that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot behind him.
Yeah, I think that the everything that we've heard from the organization, from the players, from anyone that interacts with Ben Roethlisberger is that they have the utmost confidence that he is not only fully recovered, that he's going to be better than he has been even in 2018. When you look at his injury, there's people out there like Adam Shine of CBS Sports who say, oh, he had a shoulder injury, he's done, you don't recover from those. Well, it wasn't a shoulder injury, it was an elbow injury, and you actually do recover from those. And in fact, if you look back at Peyton Manning's early 2010s when he did have an elbow surgery, he came back very strong from that. Joe Montana in his late years, he got elbow surgery, came back very strong from that. Our beat writer Dale Lawley at the DK Pittsburgh Sports, he went and found 5 different quarterbacks that were prominent and were in the later parts of their careers that all had similar surgeries and came back just fine. And listening to the players that have worked with him, Deontay Johnson, James Conner, JuJu SmithSchuster, Ryan Switzer, anyone that's worked with him said, man, the ball is flying off of his hand. He's getting it around the field, and we're getting this feel with him. So there's a lot of confidence from them, and the doctors continue to say, he's raring to go. Ben Roethlisberger looks like he's honestly either he's lost weight or he's just slimmed down or something. But I think that this whole time period where going into last year, there was pressure on him because a lot of people in the national media were saying, oh, who did it? Was it AB? Was it Ben? Was it this? There was this dichotomy of who was in the wrong of the breakup there. And then Ben gets hurt at the start of the season, and that narrative never plays out. And now the narrative is that, oh, Ben Roethlisberger's done. And I can tell you as a person that's covered Ben Roethlisberger, everyone all the athletes, they try to act like, oh, I don't care what anyone says. Ben cares. He hears what you say. He comes after you. He recently just unblocked everyone on Twitter. I used to be blocked by Ben Roethlisberger. And this is the guy who never tweeted anything bad about him other than, he could have made this throw. He could have made that throw. But he in the past, he's taken paid a lot of attention to what people say about him in the media. And I think that he still does. I think that he's just, he kind of spoke about this at a meeting where he was talking about, his faith and his Christianity. I think he's become more forgiving, or he's trying to become a bigger person, but he absolutely has that puts into the fire that makes him operate the way that he does.
That's going to be an interesting narrative throughout the season. And I'm sure that he's hoping to stomp that one out quickly. But I want to kind of change gears here and talk about one of the guys he's throwing the ball to. I heard some saying that JuJu showed that he wasn't a true number one last year. I'm not quite sure about it. I know Glenn's not quite sure about that. I think the jury's still out. But do you think JuJu can prove this season that he's more than a sidekick? And then, of course, how much does Ben's return help JuJu SmithSchuster?
I mean, I look at JuJu and I don't think he's anyone's sidekick. Now, I don't. Here's the problem. When people have this discussion, everyone's like, well, is he AB? Well, calm down. Antonio Brown had the best 6 years in the history of football at the wide receiver position. And if you look over, no one had as much when you combine the catches, the yards, the touchdowns, everything that he did, he was just lights out. That don't come around every year. JuJu's still a number one, just like Hines Ward was a number one for the Steelers, just like Santonio Holmes was a number one for the Steelers when he came around. He's a number one in that regard, that he can be your number one guy. Now, here's the thing with JuJu is that he's in a rough position because he is at the front end of 4 straight years where the Steelers have selected a wide receiver either in the mid to late second round or the very early third round. Because after him, they picked James Washington. Then they picked Deontay Johnson. And now they've picked Chase Claypool, all within those early rounds. So now that he's in a position where this is the final year of his rookie deal, He's going to be hitting free agency next year. We don't know what the salary cap is going to be because of COVID-19. Could this be a year where the Steelers have to be like, hey, man, we love you, but we have all these other young guys, and they're producing well. So I think that there's that kind of pressure on JuJu Smith-Schuster, but I can tell you that just watching him play, people looked at his numbers and said, oh, he stunk this year. I'm like, go, and he did have a couple drops, but, again, his drop rate was no higher than plenty of the other number one receivers in the league. I think like Julio Jones, Julian Edelman, like there were several players who were identified number one receivers that had more or a higher drop rate than JuJu Smith-Schuster, and he was open a lot. Like it was like kind of what you alluded to about not having anyone behind Ben Roethlisberger. Mason Rudolph and Devin Hodges just weren't good. The team survived, their existence on the roster. That's really what last season was, with them getting to 8-8 without Ben Roethlisberger. And JuJu Smith-Schuster is just as much of a victim of having to deal with that as anyone else on the roster. Now, the other thing I will say about JuJu being the number one guy this year is that Deontay Johnson is turning heads. You looked at last year as a rookie with a fourth string undrafted quarterback that didn't even play D1 ball. He was given the business to Davius White of the Bills, and it looked like he was coming off real strong. His routes are sharp. His hands are really good. He's extremely explosive. He reminds everyone of Santonio Holmes and a little bit of Antonio Brown. So the question is, what will Ben favor? Will he favor the receiver he's more familiar with, that's bigger bodied, that makes the longer play? I mean, of any target that he's had beyond 40 yards, JuJu Smith-Schuster has brought in. He's never dropped. Or will he prefer the guy that gets more separation and has the explosiveness that Deontay Johnson has? Those two are going to be the top guys in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that balances. But I don't think this is about JuJu not being enough for the organization. It's just more so like, hey, we've got a whole bunch of young guys right now. We want to see what they got.
Yeah, it's tough to compare anybody production-wise to Antonio Brown in those 6 years that he put up. But one of the biggest offseason moves that the Steelers made was bringing in tight end Eric Ebron. The way he can stretch the field up the seam. What do you think he brings to the Steelers, and how does he complement what Vance McDonald already has?
Well, see, here's the thing with Eric is that years ago, I was covering the Steelers when they were playing the Lions in 2017 in Detroit. And leading into that, Ebron had kind of like leaked some things on Twitter as like, oh, Ben Roethlisberger, he's so cool. I like him. And there were some rumor mills churning back then that Ebron was going to get traded or trying to push for a trade. And before the game, they dapped up. They hugged. After the game, they did it again. And everyone's looking around like, is this about to happen? And it never did. He went to the Colts. But now he's in Pittsburgh, and both he and Ben Roethlisberger are really excited. I think that you're going to see a lot more ambitious formations from the Steelers when it comes to the weapons that they use because, like I said, they've got 4 wide receivers they've drafted in the past 4 years that are in those top 3 rounds, and those guys are going to be featured prominently. But they're still going to want to use James Conner. They're still going to want – and now they're going to use Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald. I can see those double tight end sets becoming a thing, a lot of 12 personnel systems, or they might run bunch formations where they have Eric Ebron at the point and then they put 2 receivers behind him and let that work its way out. And that gives Ben Roethlisberger more options. And that's the thing. I look at, how the Steelers have stretched the field. I'm really interested to see how Randy Fichtner and the newly acquired quarterbacks coach Matt Canada, how they work this system, because this is going to be a very diverse set of talent. Whereas before, when Antonio Brown was with the Steelers, when it was the Killer Bees era, it was really Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant when he wasn't on suspension for smoking marijuana, and Le'Veon Bell. And after that, it was Lance Moore and guys that would be in and out all the time, Kobe Hamilton. But now you've got 4 guys that should have the legitimate talent to take on those positions, along with 2 tight ends that you could consider starters and the running back position. So I think he's going to add a lot in the matter of diversity and the kind of targets he provides.
I tell you what, at the end of this, I have a prediction for you, and you're making me a little nervous about it. Now that you're talking up all the talent that you guys have, so I'm interested to see your reaction on that. But I want to change to the other side of the ball and talk about the defense. Overall, I think, especially for the Steelers organization, very similar to the Ravens organization as far as expectations every season. I think it was certainly a disappointment. A lot of that had to do, obviously, with Ben's injury. However, something that was key and that was important was the trade for Fitzpatrick. What are the expectations going into the season of that defense now that we're seeing that it's a defense that can be leaned on to win games?
I think the expectations are the same as last year after they realized what they had in Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I think they recognized that before. I mean, I remember leading into his draft that they were like, man, if we can get Minkah, but they were never going to because that would have involved a trade up, and they rarely trade up. Devin Bush was a very rare example of that. But with Minkah, there's a lot of expectations. I can tell you the chemistry that developed mid-season without him ever being in for training camp was ridiculous. Joe Hayden said, I can now take risks that I never thought I could with the guys behind me. And I mean, he had 5 interceptions, and that's the most a Steelers corner has had since, honestly, don't even know. Like, Ike Taylor, I think the most he ever got was 3 or 4. And you go back, and you might have to go back to like Deshae Townsend or William Gay had some pick 6 years, but it's been a while, my point being. But with that, Minkah has allowed the rest of the secondary to kind of loosen up, be more aggressive, and communicate better while also having a playmaker behind them. And then you still have the front four that I think is going to be the best front four in football. If Stephon Tuitt's healthy, Cam Hayward's healthy, Bud Dupree's healthy, and, of course, T.J. Watt, the 4 of them pass rushing together and being healthy together for a season would be terrifying. And then behind them, Devin Bush has progress. Vince Williams is a good run stuffer and a pass rusher, and he's a very good inside, a Buck-style inside linebacker. I think the only weak spot that you could really see on the defense right now is maybe Terrell Edmonds at strong safety, but if they keep him in the box, I think they'll be fine. And then their depth at inside linebacker and their depth at safety. But, I mean, other than that, this defense is loaded and ready to go, and everyone's really excited to see if they can compound things. But I will say this COVID stuff is not to be played with. If someone gets it and people start getting it, it could wipe out 2 to 3 players on a defense or an offense, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a completely different team. So all these are, of course, with that skepticism that anyone can go down at any point in time, even more so than normal with injuries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched on this guy next, and I'm curious because you mentioned how the Steelers don't like to trade up. They moved up 10 spots to get Devin Bush, and I think that they were expecting him to be the next Ryan Shazier after that tragic injury. From our perspective, Bush hasn't quite lived up on that return of investment yet. What have been your observations, and what do you expect from Bush this season?
No, I think he's far ahead of where I think that even I was expecting, because people forget Ryan Shazier's rookie season wasn't that strong. People were like, man, he's a bust. And my reaction to this, like people saying about Marquise Brown right now, I'm like, oh, Joe, 1 year does not define an entire career. I was very impressed by Devin Bush because there were times where he would get beat. In the Seahawks game, he gets beat for a touchdown by a tight end, and then that same move gets used later, and he cut it off, and he recognized it. This guy makes in-game adjustments very well and adapts his game as a year goes on. And this was a rookie season where everything's flying at you. I saw the same thing with T.J. Watt. Early on in T.J. Watt's rookie year, you saw a few more pass rushing moves that we were used to seeing from his college days, but then they went away as the season went along because when you're a rookie, every week, new playbook, new team you got to learn how to fight against, all this stuff. The stuff's just coming too fast in the NFL, and that's natural for a lot of players that are adjusting to the league. I think that Devin Bush was going through the same thing, but in that second year for T.J. Watt, then he had time to hone his moves. And then when he came to training camp, he was more familiar with his fundamentals. Then when the season started, as those weeks were passing by, he was ready for him. And that's why that's when you saw him hit double digits in his second year. And then last year, he was a runner-up for the Defensive Player of the Year position. I think Devin Bush is of that caliber that he's going to continue to grow. I think that he's right on pace. I mean, you guys saw him with the interception he had on Lamar Jackson in the Ravens game. And throughout the year, he was flying sideline to sideline, stuffing the run, helping against the pass. I think that's only going to get better. He's also extremely young. I think he was, 20 years coming into last season. I think he'll be 21 going into this season. I think that he's in a very good spot for where the Steelers drafted him. And when you look at the other inside linebackers of that class, I mean, was it Devin White? He didn't have a really strong year. He's a person you could say maybe he'd be on that level. But again, I'm not criticizing Devin White because it's a rookie season, and it's the Buccaneers too.
Fair enough. You always got to add that one in. So you talked a little bit earlier about James Conner. It seems like Once again, our view outside looking in, seems like fans are split on whether James Conner can be a feature back. Last year, of course, he missed 6 games with a myriad, I felt like, of injuries. What do you expect to see from James this year? And could former Terp Anthony McFarland push him for some carries?
So I don't know about pushing him for carries. I think they're going to plan McFarland in there if he comes in strong in camp. Now, again, a lot of this hurts because of COVID. No rookie camp, no mini camp, and training camp, no preseason, and training camp is going to be focusing on getting the starters ready. So McFarland's at a disadvantage, just like most rookies are that are coming onto these rosters. But as far as James Conner, they still have the confidence that he can at least start and be a playmaker for the team. But the biggest problem, of course, like you said, are injuries. And there's a lot of faith built up in James Conner, especially here in Pittsburgh. He played for the University of Pittsburgh. He was a star for them. Then tore his ACL, and immediately after tearing his ACL, found out he had cancer, battled back from having cancer, and then his senior year comes in, has a great year, leads them to the only team to beat Clemson in 2016 before they went on their national title run. And you know, he has a lot of stock built up here in Pittsburgh. Like, he released a book this past spring, and people love it and they love him, and he'll forever have a home here. But as far as the team goes and the salary cap, with TJ Watt coming around the corner, they still need to extend Cam Hayward. They're going to be looking at other guys like JuJu SmithSchuster. James Conner's in a rough position because also he's on the front end of 4 picked guys that have been picked in a row. You got Jalen Samuels the year after him. You got Benny Snell the year after Samuels. And then this year, of course, Anthony McFarland. Now, granted, those guys aren't picked as high as the receivers, but you look at the running back position, Benny Snell, I think they have a lot of confidence that he can be a power back and a guy that grinds for them late in games. And the Steelers historically love those type of guys. But McFarland, I think he's going to be a guy that they put in with certain packages with, hey, you know what? This is going to have a lot more spacing, and that's what you do. You make people miss out in open space. Whereas James Conner, he'll fight in the hole. He's really good on power runs. You watch him, his best production comes when there's a pulling guard or a fullback where he says, that's my gap. That's the shoulder I'm targeting, and these are the guys that are coming, and that's the defender that I attack. That's when I see him be the most confident, hit the hole the hardest. But again, it's going to be, you know, can his body hold up? You know, there's some people that speculate that maybe the chemotherapy that he went through when he was in college deteriorated his body a little bit, and he's not able to do as much for as long. So those are a lot of concerns. If he gets through a full year this year, maybe he comes back. But I do see McFarland being worked into the system, especially because, like I said, Matt Canada, who knows McFarland, and McFarland had his best year at Maryland when Canada was there, he knows how to use him. But Canada was also offensive coordinator for Pitt the year that James Conner went off in 2016. And I really see the chance that he's going to try and add his little wrinkles to the offense that make it more usable for those type of players.
That will be that'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah. Well, the most important thing, I guess other than Ben, seems to me would be the offensive line for the Steelers. Mm. And for probably the past 10 years now, they've been top-ranked offensive line in the top 10, thanks to a lot of consistency and not a whole lot of change in parts. So with Ramon Foster retiring and the rest, a couple of those guys getting up there in age, how good can the O-line be for a team that, with Big Ben coming back from injury, can't afford to be weak up front?
It's going to be an interesting year. Marquise Pouncey's still going to be there. David DeCastro's still – some people argue that David DeCastro may even be still the best player on the team. I know Madden says that with his 91 rating. But when you look at the offensive line, the biggest changes are, of course, like you said, Ramon Foster retired. They're planning on moving, at least to start the training camp, Matt Filer, who was the right tackle, to the left guard position. And for those who might be confused, Filer does look more comfortable at guard. They did this last year when they played the Los Angeles Rams because Aaron Donald was coming to town. And Filer held his own against Donald. They were able to win that game. Donald wasn't completely neutralized, but he wasn't the dominant force that took over the game and prevented the offense from ever moving the ball like he can be at times. So they're confident that Fowler can play guard. They're going to be asking either Zach Banner or Chukwuma Okorafor to step in at right tackle, which is going to be an interesting battle because Banner is a guy who's bounced around from a few different teams. He was having some weight issues, but ever since he's come to Pittsburgh, he's rejuvenated his career. He's rededicated himself. He's become a workaholic, and now he's like a confident veteran that feels like this is his time. But Okorafor is the prototypical right tackle. He has the footwork. He's from Western Michigan. He's like a 4th-round pick, but he's huge. He has great feet. The biggest problem I have with him is that he doesn't finish the play enough. There's times that he'll have an edge rusher locked down, and he just won't bury him. He'll kind of be like, okay, I have you in your spot. You're going to be right here. I've won this battle, and then the extra effort sometimes gets past him. So that's going to be an interesting battle, but you still got Villanueva, you still got Pouncey, you still got DeCastro, and Fowler moving over to where he's going to be more comfortable. I think that those 4 guys can hold up as long as the right tackle isn't a huge liability. They're still going to be in the top 10 range. They won't be top 5 like you'd say they might have been in 2017 and 2016, but they're going to have that edge that I think allows them to at least run the ball more consistently and give Ben Roethlisberger the time to process defenses.
That's going to be interesting. I think every team in the AFC North, there's going to be a lot of interesting questions answered on the offensive line, most definitely. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is Mike Tomlin. As successful as Tomlin has been, his time is in Pittsburgh, seems once again to us that fans either love him or they hate him. From what you've seen, how does the front office and ownership feel about the job that Tomlin has done? And does Tomlin have anything to worry about if the Steelers miss the playoffs again, even if it isn't due to an injury to Big Ben or any other extenuating circumstances?
I'll say this. Any depiction you get on social media is purely from social media. The Steelers love Tomlin. Tomlin, in my opinion, can write his ticket out of town or to stay in town based on however he feels. Now, his son Dino is playing college ball in Maryland. Some have speculated that he may want to retire or at least step away from pro football to go, support both of his sons. I think his younger son is also about to step into college ball. But that's pure speculation at this point. Mike Tomlin has the full confidence of the front office, the owners, the Rooneys. They love him. And you look at how the Rooneys have operated over the past 50 years. The Steelers have had 3 coaches since 1969. No organization has that continuity. And when Cowher was going through it, and Cowher actually had losing seasons. Mike Tomlin still has never had a losing season. Right. Cowher went 7-9 in 98, 6-10 in 99, and 9-7 in 2000, missing 3 straight playoffs, and they gave him an extension. And fans were like, and there were people in the media and fans were like, what are you doing? What do you got? Why is this guy getting an extra chance? Because they saw that, hey, this guy keeps the locker room together. He has the team organized. That's what we believe in. And that stability got them their 5th Super Bowl championship. And I think that that's what they're seeing out of Tomlin, especially this past year. I can tell you so many people, and it's people in the media too. I'm not going to front. And some of this does have a little bit of race play into it. Go look up the N-word and Tomlin on game day, and you will see quite a few of those posts, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that with the media. I'm saying that with a lot of fans that I've seen their criticism about Tomlin be a lot harsher than, Sean Payton, who went 7-9 3 straight years and kept his job, and now he's used those losing seasons to amass draft picks that have him where he is now. But with Tomlin, the team has confidence in him. A lot of people thought this was going to be the year. Without Ben Roethlisberger, he's going to have a losing season. They're going to go 5-11. It's going to be bad. And then the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade's going to look really stupid because they had a really bad season. And then none of that happened. They went 8-6 without Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that's a testament to Mike Tomlin getting his guys to believe in him. Even I don't know if you guys watched this closely, but when the Myles Garrett Mason Rudolph fiasco went off, Garrett attacks Rudolph with a helmet. Garrett then accuses Rudolph of saying the N-word to him, and then Rudolph is like dismayed and he doesn't know how to respond. And Mike Tomlin goes on ESPN and he says, "Look, I can't. I wasn't out there. I can't say what was said, but I can tell you that that young man has never said anything like that, and we support him in whatever he does." And the players respond. They're like, "That's a leader of men." And Mason Rudolph even tweeted that. That has been the read on Tomlin since he's been with the Steelers. Everyone respects him. everyone, if they don't love him, they know that this guy is about what he says and they believe in his message. And if there was anyone that actually believed that the Steelers locker room was falling apart, it should have last year. They lost Ben Roethlisberger. And you think about it, they really lost Ben, Brown, and Bell in the span of a few months because Bell disappeared in 2018. They really didn't draft anyone to help with that. Brown disappeared after 2018, and then Ben disappeared in the start of 2019. The three biggest names on the team that would get carried them for the past 5 years before that were gone, and you still couldn't get them to have a losing record. The front office is fine with it. The owners are fine with it. It's going to be more so about the fans. And if they miss the playoffs again, the hatred that will come for Tomlin, I would have to, as a writer, I would have to see some serious breakdowns in the organization for me to even consider saying that he's on any type of hot seat.
Yeah, I feel like Tomlin and Harbaugh have a lot of similarities in that they're great leaders. Neither one is an offense or defensive play caller on game day. They let their coordinators do their job. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, so I agree with you. I think that the criticism of Tomlin is unreal. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, but we hear it a lot in Baltimore too. Harbaugh gets his fair share of criticism despite his incredible success as well. But I do –
gone before Lamar Jackson came back. And I was just sitting here like, this guy got you a Super Bowl and you want him gone? I was just like,
it's crazy. And how many coaches would have taken that chance on Lamar and not only draft him, but build the entire organization around him?
And I give the full credit to John Harbaugh for getting that. And it's funny. I was writing about Lamar Jackson leading up into that draft, and I'm like, man, if the Steelers get this guy, it would be such a benefit to their organization. And people said, oh man, you're just trying to get him into the Steelers. Like, you're crazy, Chris. Lamar Jackson can't read a book, let alone a defense. I had literally someone told me that, and I was like, wow, like the little that you think of this man. And
right.
Again, you see the racial component with that being said about him, but not players like Josh Allen. And then, of course, they picked Terrell Edmonds. The Ravens picked Lamar Jackson, and I'm just looking around like, now, maybe Lamar Jackson wouldn't be playing right now for the Steelers, but he sure as heck wouldn't be an MVP leading the Ravens to 2 straight division titles.
Right. Yeah, and you know what's great about Lamar? It's just, I think there are a lot of people who are skeptical about him, but I don't know if I, as a person, have met an athlete that I've liked more as a person than Lamar. I mean, he is just the most likable superstar, and I can't think of a more likable, down-to-earth superstar. It's just, anyway. But I could sit here and talk about Lamar all day, but I do have one other question for you. Is there a player or a camp battle that you, being on the inside, that you're excited about that someone on the outside like us might not be aware of?
Well, I already exhausted the right tackle talk with Banner and Okorafor, so I don't want to revisit that for y'all.
I got into it I got in trouble on YouTube comments because I didn't give him enough love at right tackle when we broke down the offensive line. And we gave the offensive line of the Steelers plenty of love, but apparently my love wasn't enough for the right tackle. Was it Filer?
So Filer is the guy that was right tackle, and he's moving to left guard.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this. Banner has an interesting inside track because he's become very beloved in Pittsburgh, sort of temporarily. We'll see how long this lasts. But during the season, he became, as you know, the Steelers sometimes will trot out their 6 offensive lineman packages, and they'll have the eligible linemen. And as the season went on last year, they would make announcements, and number 72 has reported to be eligible, and the crowd, because it happened so often, the crowd would cheer, and Zach Banner would play it up. And then when they took knees after wins, he would be like really serious and just kind of make it. And so people bought into it, and he's kind of made this pocket for himself. And now everyone's like, this guy's cool. And then after Deshaun Jackson made his anti-Semitic comments that he had to walk back, Zach Banner was one of the first NFL athletes to come out and say, we have to call this out just like we call anything else out. And, this is Pittsburgh, where we just saw a synagogue get shot up less than 2 years ago. So we got to talk about this. And the outpouring of love for that man just has come through the roof. So, there's a lot of people rooting for Zach Banner. So that's an interesting battle. But if I was to pick one battle that people might be overlooking, I would look at the slot cornerback position, because Mike Hilton, who has a very good record playing against the Ravens, whatever it is, he is really good at lateral play. He anticipates well inside the box. He's been the Steelers' slot cornerback for the past 3-ish seasons. But he's a restricted free agent. They brought him back in on his contract. That ends after this year. He's going to hit the free agent market. They have a rookie or a guy that's on his rookie deal, Cameron Sutton, who's the backup slot cornerback and also plays outside a little bit. Hilton's a smaller guy that is extremely feisty and will pick people apart. And he's cut off Lamar Jackson. In Lamar Jackson's rookie year, there was a play where he could have scored a touchdown. It was one-on-one with him and Hilton shut it down. Hilton also intercepted Lamar Jackson last year. But you look at how he plays, Hilton is very good in the box and working underneath. But because he's like 5'8", when you ask him to cover guys down the seam and around the field, that's where he starts to feel his weakness. And Sutton, that's one of his strengths. He can play people down the field. He can tackle well. He uses his size a little bit better. And he's more like 5'10", 5'11", typical, cornerback size. So that's going to be an interesting battle because both of them are very football smart. I talked to them in the locker room. Hilton will give me breakdowns of this is why I did this. And Sutton, as a rookie, was telling me his first job as a rookie was when Joe Hayden went down, he had to go blanket A.J. Green for an entire half of football, and A.J. Green caught maybe like 2 passes. So that's going to be an interesting battle this year. Hilton, in my eyes, still has the edge because he knows the defense and they love his aggressiveness. But keep an eye on Cameron Sutton because the defense the defense does like him a lot. He just hasn't been able to get on the field because Nelson and Hayden took over.
I tell you what, whatever they can do to shut down AJ Green, I'd like to have some of that because I don't think
Can
we
you tell the Ravens.
Yeah.
My goodness gracious.
So it's time to dig into some predictions here. We're going to ask for your predictions as far as the Steelers season coming up. But before we do so, I'm just going to kind of set the table with this, and I am very much alone on this prediction. Okay. Glenn does not agree with me. However, I just want to go on record saying that I was correct on the Browns prediction last year when I said their best would be 8-8 and they would not make the playoffs. Glenn almost fell out of his chair. Yeah. I just have a hunch that the Steelers are going to have a rough one this year. I just think it's going to be a rough one. Not too much statistical analysis behind it, but I'm calling 5-11.
He's nonsense.
Not alone. We on the Locked On Podcast Network, we do these Ultimate Division crossover weeks where the 4 guys that host within the division will get together for 4 straight episodes and each day break down a team. And everyone in our division said, "Oh yeah, Steelers, they're out. They're 4-12, 5-11, get out of here." And I'm like, 5-11? What makes you think that this defense that was the best defense in the NFL is all of a sudden going to stink? And Ben Roethlisberger, even if he's serviceable, and this is what I keep telling people. The Steelers were almost dead last in offense last year. If they are 16th, if they are just middle of the road, they're making the playoffs. I mean, they were the 7th seed last year. I have a hard time seeing that this team fall apart unless Ben Roethlisberger and Minkah Fitzpatrick and T.J. Watt all get COVID or get serious injuries. Then okay, fine, that might happen. But if the team is normal, healthy in the way that we expect most teams to be healthy throughout a season, I have a hard time seeing that. But I do have interesting predictions on how the year is going to work out for all the AFC North teams and AFC in general.
That is our next question.
Oh, go ahead, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our next question. So what are your thoughts on the rest of the North in particular?
Right.
I am like how you felt last year. I don't see why anyone buys into the Browns until you prove it to me. I just, though, no matter how much talent you amass, if your organization has no structural integrity, if there's no foundation to work with, I can't believe in you. And sometimes you can still hit something hot, but then eventually it's going to cool off and fall apart. Look at the Jaguars. They had all the talent in the world. Everyone thought, man, that's the new dynasty. They're going to be taking over the AFC. They were gone in a year. Yep. They beat the Steelers, almost went to the Super Bowl, to beat the Patriots, and now they're an afterthought. I mean, they're split. Jalen Ramsey's gone. Calais Campbell's with the Ravens. All their stars are broken up. The Browns, I don't see why anyone thinks that they're much different right now. When you look at, Myles Garrett, young talent. Denzel Ward, young talent. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, great names. But this ain't Madden. This ain't. If I take over the sticks, they're gonna be fine. You're gonna see these structural problems come up. You're going to see these, how do they deal with losses? How do they bounce back? Baker Mayfield keeps saying, "Oh, I'm over people talking about me and I'm done talking to the media." But here you are talking to the media about being done talking to the media. And I don't buy into that. And then with the Bengals, I know everyone's hyped on Joe Burrow, but I'm one of the people that think that LSU's success had a lot to do with Joe Burrow, but it also had a lot to do with them being that much better than everyone else. And I don't know if Joe Burrow comes in and being Joe Cool and throwing it everywhere without that kind of talent around him in the NFL, and especially with their offensive line. I think they're going to get massacred in a few games. I think last year the Steelers had 21 sacks on the Bengals over 2 games. If Joe Burrow has to deal with that, which it looks like he might, that's going to be rough. So with those 2 teams, I think that they're both in the 6-10 to 5-11 range, maybe 7-9. But with the Ravens and the Steelers, I really see this being a battle that gets duked out throughout the season. I forget the exact weeks that they play, but I know that they've designed the division games to be later in the season for the most part because
Thanksgiving is one of them.
Yeah, right. I think that's going to be a toss-up. I honestly think both teams are going to be in the 11-5 to 12-4 range. Don't forget, both teams have the easiest schedules in the NFL. And I think, and we, of course, there's quotations on that because we don't know what anyone's going to be like this year. But, you look at some of the teams that these guys get to face. There's a lot of young quarterbacks that are going to have to deal with not having been able to train with their team throughout the year. And that includes Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen. You're going to get Daniel Jones. You're going to get Dwayne Haskins if he's the starter in Washington. That you go down the line with the teams that these guys face. There's a lot of favorable matchups for these defenses to really get after some of these guys and take advantage of mistakes that maybe wouldn't have happened as much if we had a full training camp. So I go back and forth with who I think is going to win the division. I lean to the Steelers because of Marshall Yonda's disappearance. I really think that he is a lot more important than a lot of people give him credit for. But I still look at Lamar Jackson. I'm like, that dude's ridiculous. There's no way to predict how he's going to play sometimes. Or not predict how like good or bad, but predict on where he's going to go with the football. So I go back and forth, but I think both make the playoffs. One's just going to win the division, and that's just going to be who hosts the eventual AFC divisional playoff matchup. But yeah, that's my prediction for them. But across the AFC, I still see the Chiefs as the top dog. You got to beat them. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. I'm interested to see if the Titans really do what they did again last year. I'm not so yeah. Your face is kind of like, I'm like, yeah. Now that we know Ryan Tannehill's coming,
right.
Well, you touched on the Browns, and the one thing I'll say about the Browns is their offensive line looks to be much improved with the addition of Conklin at right tackle, and I believe Willis is the tackle. Wills out of Alabama. Mm-hmm. To seal up the 2 tackle spots, give Baker a little bit more time. I would say, I'm a Baker guy. I was a Baker fan when he was in college. Obviously, I'm a Ravens fan, so I'm not a fan of his now. But I believe in Baker a lot more than Jimmy does. And Burrow might have just had the greatest season in college football that I've ever seen personally. I've never seen any better, and he's surrounded by an awful lot of weapons in Cincinnati. But that offensive line could be the thing that costs him.
Here's my thing with Conklin: he's a run blocking tackle. I'm not so sure that you put him up against having to deal with the pass rush a lot that he's going to be able to hold up consistently. I'm really interested to see how that plays up. I love Wills. I thought he was a heck of a player in college. He was my top tackle. I was so surprised that he fell outside the top 10. But I'm excited to see what that's like. But again, this is the Browns, man. You know how many times they've amassed the super team? Last year, they had a whole Sports Illustrated article with like, this is our time, and it wasn't their time again. And I gotta see it to believe it, because what happens when they start the season 2-4, and then people are saying, hey, get out Baker Mayfield, switch in someone else. And then you got discontinuity. Then you got Odell Beckham Jr. saying, come get me, like he was last year. There's a lot of that's the organizational stuff that I'm talking about. That, like, it's okay if you get one knucklehead. I mean, the Steelers had Antonio Brown. It's okay to get one knucklehead, but when you got an entire organization that just falls apart in those big moments, perfect example, Bengals playoff game against the Steelers, where you saw Burfict committing penalties, Pac-Man Jones committing penalties. The whole team was just incensed and losing their minds. And Jeremy Hill, they have the game over. He's celebrating. He thinks he's great, and he fumbles. Late in the fourth quarter when they need him. That's the kind of the integrity that I'm talking about, where a coaching staff, an organization has a hold on the players that says, hey, you know what? This ain't over till we make sure it's over. And I don't see that with the Ohio teams. I think the Ravens and the Steelers have so many similarities as an organization and how they run, and that's why the two of them bang off each other for the past 2 decades.
Right. No, I'm totally with you. I'm interested to see how the AFC North is going to turn out. I'm with you on the Browns there. Yeah, I'm not a big believer in Baker. No commercials this year, though, so I guess that's an improvement. But I think that the truncated offseason, Glenn, you've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
No prep, no runway is really going to hurt them, because they haven't, they changed their front office probably about as often as I change my draws. So, come on, man. I mean, it's they have no prep time. So I think it's going to be really interesting. But, we're really interested to see how this thing's going to turn out. I'm excited for that Thanksgiving game. It's going to be a blast. I'm sure we'll have you on again to talk about it if you're down. But thanks for coming on the show. Why don't you let people know where they can find your stuff?
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This is always fun. You guys can, you can follow my work at dkpittsburghsports.com. You can subscribe to the Locked On Steelers podcast. If you want to just see my general takes on stuff, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. That's CARTER Critiques, CRITIQUES. Boom, spelled it right.
Nice.
But yeah, so that you follow me on there. I'm always just giving general takes, and guys, I'm very open. If you follow me, I follow you back. Don't be afraid to hit me with an ad or a DM. I usually respond unless someone's being a jerk, and then I'll just hit the mute button on you. But thanks so much for having me. This is always fun. You guys have such a good show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on once again. And we'll put those links down below in the description. Go ahead and feel free to subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.